right, just about ready to get this show on the road, and I think we are good. Excellent. All right, hey. All right, welcome everyone. Hey, welcome to another beautiful lunch to a Comicbase live stream. Just wanted to make sure that the chat interface was connected. It was slow today. I'm not sure why. We're having lots of weird internet glitchiness. I hope it doesn't give us too much grief during the actual show, but. Got a lot to do today. We're going to keep this one pretty basic in terms of the theme. I have a little bit of comic-based news to share with everyone. After that, I want just a tiny bit of industry news, but then I want to go straight into as many Q&As as I can. So please, if you haven't already emailed me with your question, please go ahead and post it in the chat. I will hit as many of these as I possibly can, and we'll hit it like that. So hope everyone's doing well. Just want to do a quick say hi, everyone. Hey, Andre. Hey, Greg. Glad everyone could make it here, and Jeff, good to know. And a string of thunderstorms kept Phoenix in the cool lower hundreds. Good grief! Yeah, I went through Phoenix when I was looking around in the Southwest, wondering if I should move to a different place than California, and I gotta tell you, man, I just couldn't take the heat. It was a beautiful town, but it had a lot going on after dark. But during the day, man, it was just brutal. But great comic shops on the other hand in there. So I forget the names of them right now, but there were a couple I visited. They were just terrific. Okay, and now finally the chat just like went kaboom, and now we have everything. All right, cool. All right, hey Oro, hey Perry over at Zadu, Steve, how's it going, man? Doug and low sound volume. Is this any better, folks? How is that? The levels look pretty good on my side, but let me know if you need more. I'm flying by gauges right now, so I hope I got it. I played with a lot of stuff in terms of like the show settings today, so I wouldn't be at all surprised if something wasn't a little wonky. I'm gonna talk. Yeah, that's about as hot as I dare get. All right. Hopefully we got it there. Okay, sounds very low. All right, so hopefully that gets better for folks. Good, getting better, loud and clear. Sweet. All right, cool. Wow, a lot of folks in the chat. Hey, Ron, Scott, Doug, great to see everyone. All right, let's hit it. First of all, ComicBase build 1872, posted just a couple minutes ago. It does a couple of interesting little things. Honestly, it's of interest to you mostly if you were in the beta group for ComicBase 2021, because when we were first getting the collection value graph rolling, there was a period of time where we weren't doing a great job of recording all the value graphs properly, and so depending on where in the beta cycle you were and what build you were doing, your collection value graph over time might have a lot of very bizarre, weird little dunks down to zero and then fall straight back up to the proper number. Anyway, Build 1872 will clear those out, during the suspect period of time. We just kind of nuke those points. Anyway, another thing it does is we reinstituted some checks for badge checks for your collection value stats from the collection overview window. They should trigger a little bit more frequently. So if you have been expecting to get certain badges and you hadn't seen them, go ahead and go to File, Collection Statistics, and see if that doesn't score for you now after you install the new build 1872. And then the other big news, and this is something that's not. I mean, it's visible if you're watching our weird goings on behind the scenes and just kind of listening for the construction noise, but it doesn't necessarily show up in your program, is we did a huge cutover to the item notes. Basically when we were getting ready to do the new version of ComicBase, the next major version, one of the big things we kind of got derailed on for over a month was the idea of we wanted to be able to pull out the things that describe an issue in terms of its variantness, its whether it was a special edition, and so forth. We want to take that away from the notes field and put it into a field called item description, which we could push an update to with some impunity. Whereas if we left that stuff in the notes field stacks. In other words, so if we come along the first week and we say, okay, this is cover A. Okay, that's your first note. Next week, someone says, oh, it's the Sergio Cariello cover A. Then you get cover A, Sergio Cariello cover A. And then someone says, it's the 1 in 25 retailer incentive Sergio Cariello cover A. And then you got cover A, Sergio Cariello cover A, 1 in 25, et cetera, et cetera. And it just gets worse and worse. We wanted a way to pull that stuff out into a field where we could just say, look, if we say the official version is the 1 in 25 Sergio Carriola cover A, that replaces what was there before, and it doesn't just keep on stacking to infinity. So a lot of mechanics that had to go to make that happen, most of which you won't see until the new version ships, but if you're watching things like Atomic Avenue, things like that, you'll notice that there's now a separate field for all those items. Other than notes, the notes got cleaned up quite a bit now, and because they no longer are incessantly cluttered with that sort of information. And then we also had to make sure that we were both forward and backward compatible to both the testers of the new version, who expect to have a separate item notes field in their databases, and also that doesn't mess up any of you guys who are using the actual version of ComicBase that's out there in the world, ComicBase 2021, because you guys are still going to get updates in your notes as you expect, and then when we cut over to the new version, those things will automatically flow over to their new homes in the item notes. Anyway, a lot of behind the scenes work, not super sexy. It has a big implication. It's funny because when we were drawing up our feature list for what we wanted to do in ComicBase 2022, that was like a footnote on the list, and it wound up being the thing we spent more time on than almost anything else because it impacts everything, including just the way you post sales files and reporting and etc. And so it just wound up being just a major pain in the tuchus, but it seems like we survived. It's been up for a couple days now, and we haven't had the roof fall in on us, so I'm assuming things are largely well. If they're not, please let us know at support@comicbase.com, and we'll fix it as soon as we can. But we think things are going pretty good, so knock wood, and we think that went okay. All right. Other brief news. There is going to be, we pushed the update this week early because the folks out in California, our major guy, Mark Castaneda, a lot of you guys have dealt with him, is going out with his lovely wife and on their delayed honeymoon. So instead of, they were bunkered up in California during the whole coof, and so now they're having a lovely time on the beaches of Hawaii right now. And that, of course, means that all the books that were sent in this week that we didn't have any kind of other transmission for are waiting to be scanned by the crew over there as soon as you get in there. So, if you don't see a few books this week, try to be, understanding about it. You'll see him in a couple of days when he returns. In the meantime, we did push all the information we actually cleared corrections, so I feel pretty glad about that, and thank you so much to all the folks who've been sending that information. And we pushed already thousands of updates in this week's update, even without some of the new DC books and whatnot. So you can download that now and let us know what you think. And then next week, I'm going to be out because I'm going to be riding the roller coasters over at Hershey Park with my family vacation. So there will be no podcast next week. So for the first time in at least half a year, you got to find something else to do with yourself on a Wednesday because I'm going to be going, wah! On some of these crazy looking roller coasters over at Hershey Park. So that's about it for that end of the news. So industry news. One brief item of note. Let me put it up on the screen here. So remember how we were talking last time out about all these myriad, problems with, patches and security and things like that. And I concluded by saying that, like, one of the things I actually fear is that people's default reaction will be like, I'm too scared. I'm not going to download anything because, it might mess up my computer. Literally one day after, that podcast, note came out from Microsoft saying, yeah, there's a bug that's existed in versions of Windows going back at least to Windows 7. Even though Windows 7 is no longer supported, we're going back and patching even Windows 7 because this thing is so bad. It's a security problem that affects your print spooler. It's the program that basically when you hit print and you're sitting at a 50-page document, this little program takes over and spools out to your printer and runs in the background, does all this stuff. Well, it turns out the print spooler in Windows 7, 10, 8, 8.1, everything right up to the last minute could be hacked, and you could be used to execute system level code on your machine. So they called it's a bug so awesome it has its own name. It's called the print nightmare exploit, and Microsoft found out about this one, took some extraordinary measures to patch it around. It's what they call a zero-day exploit, which is one of those things where, like, download that update right this frickin' minute. I mean, if you want to pause till the end of the podcast, do it, but then immediately head back over to Windows Update, and when you see an optional update, or it might not even be optional, talking about a service pack enhancement to Windows 10, whatever version of Windows you're running, 20H1, or in my case, download the darn thing, restart your machine, and it will patch up the thing. And if for some reason you find you can't do the whole thing, stop your print spooler service is the main advice on that one, because this is a bad one. So yeah, that's fun, huh? Anyway, so that's what we're doing these days. You know, it's a never-ending race between the good guys and the bad guys. And I, you know, respect all the folks out there who have to identify all these things and patch them and keep the rest of our computers safe. But man, oh man, the bad guys are busy. All right, anyway, enough of that stuff. Let's get on to other things. Let me do a quick check of the chat before we dive into questions here. All right, let's see here. Drink roll call. Todd Comics was big fun until they went out of business. Right, clown. Not sure what Jeff's going on about. Sorry, I'm going to read more quietly to myself. Drink roll. Yes, I was trying to figure out what I was drinking. Okay, Andre, follow up with me. I think I might have been waiting for some info from you, but if not, go ahead and follow up with me in the via email on that one. We'll take care of your correction points if we haven't already. Let's see here. Everyone's talking about their drinks. How I reputation after we got H2O. Yeah, last week's chat is funny because I'm sitting there, I'm talking and talking, and I'm going back afterwards. Rolling back through the chat, and it's like, man, you guys mixed it up. All right, so let's see here. Okay, I think that's about it. All right, so let's get on to it. All right, so guys, if you the rules of the game here, if you have questions, make them as tight as you can. In the chat, I will hit as many as you can. And if you would say hashtag ComicBaseTV, it pops out on my screen a little bit easier, so I can catch them and see them a little better in this stream of things. Okay, so Viv says, I've got an old ComicBase free, and I want to start getting entered ComicBase again. How do I do it? Okay. Well, all right, so let's back it up. I mean, because ComicBase Free is our demo program. It's the one that the devious use of ComicBase Free is to get you hooked on the idea of, hey, this is a very useful program. It's got a lot of information into it, makes entering a large collection possible. But it's a demo. We don't get paid for it. So it has certain limits. One of the limits is it only stops at 500 comic books. So every time you launch it, it gives you a little death count. It says, well, enter your first comic book. It says, well, you can enter 499 more, then 498, 497. And as soon as you hit 500, it says, yeah, we're not going to open anymore. You have to actually buy a real version of the program if you want to keep going. Anyway, that is, on the upside, the price is good, free, but one of the other major downsides of ComicBase Free is it doesn't come with downloadable updates, because, it was the free version. We do, however, refresh the database on ComicBase Free about once a quarter. So if you haven't, been using ComicBase, like let's say you looked at it, you got busy with other things, it's been a couple years, you haven't really done that much work in it, best thing to do is just download the latest version of ComicBase Free. It'll be, be accurate with pricing in comics up to, a couple, 3 months ago, and at that point, it'll give you a better place to get started. And as soon as you get to the point in your collecting life where you either enter the 500th comic book, or you find yourself you actually need to use the features of the real program and post your comics and and stuff like that. If you get to that point, then it's a good idea to at least get ComicBase Express, get onto a full an actual version of the program, because the free is lovely, but it is a demo, so that is one of the limits of it. On the other hand, if you have ComicBase Free from ComicBase 2017, it will convert your old database. So if you'd had the version from back in the day and you entered 100 comic books into it and you want to get back to it, just open it up. It'll convert your database just like a regular copy of ComicBase will, and then you can pick up and move on from there. All right, moving on. Let's see here from Steve. I'm more or less paraphrasing an email question you sent to me because I thought it was a really good question, and that was, how do I move a comic from comics? How do I move a title from comics to books? So in other words, every once in a while, oops, sorry, I got used to this one. That was my overhead cam. Cam 2 used to be the computer cam, but I'm trying to get this switcher business worked out, and they said they wanted to be defaulted to your computer being camera 4. So, all right, I gotta break my own reflexes now. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. So let's say I've got, I don't know. Let's say there was some. Let's see. Buffy the Vampire Slayer pet. All right, so here we go. Buffy the Vampire Slayer adult coloring book. Okay, so let's say we decide, no, this doesn't really belong in comics. It's not a comic, it's a book, right? Which in this case is actually accurate. What I would do is if you go under the, I believe, the edit menu, and you go down to change title media type, then it gives you a choice of anything which isn't the one you're on right now. You can change it to be a book, or you can change it to be a magazine. In this case, this is a one-shot. It has no comic stories, which is kind of our dividing line for what constitutes is this a comic book or not? Is, you know, basically, is the primary use of this item to tell stories using words and pictures, you know, with word balloons as opposed to just illustrations next to big blocks of text. If it is, then it's a comic book. If it isn't, then it's probably a book. I think the one in question we were talking about was one that had been a prose novel, which for historical reasons we'd put into, you know, ComicBase back in the pre-ComicBase 2020 days. The only thing we had back then was comic books, so we put it as a comic book, but it was time to move it over to books. So what you would do is just go under here, edit, change title media type, change it to books. It gives you a warning, says, hey, there's a couple fields we can't transfer over. We're going to transfer over everything we can, but certain fields, like, say, for instance, the cover artist. Books don't have cover art. Oh, I'm sorry, cover inker. Books don't have cover inkers as a field, so that's going to go away. But other than that, it will transfer everything we can. Boom, it's a book. You'll see that we're now over in the books category. Everything's moves over there. The condition went from being near mint to used like new. It does a few other, you know, basic transformations on the whole thing. The thing that'll generally jack you up when you're moving things from one title to another like that one is the default in the world is that books, there are books that come in series, and those books have numbers too, but typically, you know, way more books are just one-shots. And so when you do things like that, it's worth going in here. If this is one that didn't have a number on it, double-click on it, pull up the detail on it, uncheck part of a numbered series, and then you'll see that it's it goes from being just, you know, 1 to being, you know, whatever its binding is. In this case, a paperback, so TPB, and that'll be its official designation. That's typically the thing you would change moving from comics to books. Moving from books to comics, you got the opposite version, although I can't think of when there's ever been a moving of a books to a comics. Comics to magazines, it winds up being very similar. You wind up changing very little because magazines typically did come out with some kind of numbers attached to them and so forth. But going from comics to books, that would be the one caveat I'd watch out for there. And then if you had a picture for it before and you want to change it, one good thing to do here is right-click on this guy here, say Show Picture File. Now, this one we don't actually have a picture file, but if we did, you'd see the picture file in there. Change its name from 1 to TPB, and then it'll show up with a picture. All right, that is that question. Let me do a quick check of the chat, see how we're doing, and we'll come back. All right. Oh, and Greg also wants to remind everyone very well that we also have a forum over to Atomic Avenue for asking these sorts of things. Okay, Ronald. Let's see. Any future update to allow us to control how we print out reports? They had 10 more comics to Fathom. Only want to print that collection out. You can do that right now. It's called a quick report. What you would do, let's go over to, say, Fathom, and you can do this for any search. Let's say I want to do a search for, you know, whatever, you know, comic books that have risen for more than $10 in value, comic books that are written by, that have art by Michael Turner, whatever I do. But all these things right here essentially work the same way. What you would do is highlight all the ones you're interested in, and a good thing to worry about, and let me switch over the camera here so you can, man, I'm really going to be fighting that reflex to switch to the wrong camera. All right, let's go ahead and bump the key down. All right, now I'm back on screen. Okay, so what you would do is go do your search, whatever it is, or if you say you're just going to Fathom and you're highlighting a bunch of ones you want to print, click at the far left over here, highlight them, and go ahead and use the control key if you want, if you don't want to see certain books. And at that point, once you've got the things you want to see on your report highlighted, go ahead and just say, I want to see a quick report, which I always get to using this. Quick report, which is F7. It's a right click on there and just say F7. At that point, it will go ahead and give you just a basic report of the stuff you had there. And which of course inconveniently is on the wrong monitor, but I'll bring it over. There we go. And so that's just the stuff I had there that I had selected. Now, if you want to get really crazy, you also can use that similar trick there. Highlight these guys right there. And once you've got things selected, you can say report selected titles as, and then you can say things like a price list or issue checklist, and whatever you selected over here instantly becomes your selection on the more formatted reports over here, for these different things. So that's a great trick to use if you want to kind of extend these other ones here. And the one that's really cool on that one is if I want to do a title search. Let's say I want to report on I want a collection report, but only for my Marvel titles. I can go ahead and do a find for my publisher. Let's go find title fields. Publisher is, let's go Marvel UK. It'll be a smaller list. All right, so here's all the Marvel UK ones. If I highlight all these guys and I say report selected titles as collection report, then those 153 items are the only things that are going to appear on my collection report. And so now I have a collection report just of my Marvel UK titles. So anyway, that's like 4 tips in one. I hope that worked for you. All right, moving on. Let's go here. Crow. I have the feeling this is another one of these ones where we're going to have to read the chat after this whole thing is done here to try to figure out what's going on. All right, let's see. Been moving books to comics, and a number of items got moved that shouldn't have. That's why we have contents and corrections at the CB message boards. Yeah, I know, especially when we were doing. There have been a number of comics and magazines that we've gone back and forth with, where there's been an involving discussion in the editorial about, well, does this belong there or not? And where we're at is it has less to do with the form factor of the book, and just like Savage Sword of Conan is magazine sized, but it's treated as a comic book because all that's in it is comic stories. So we don't really care what the paper size is. Just like we don't care, a mini comic is still a comic if it tells things that are words and pictures with word balloons and such. A magazine on the other hand, like if it'd been like Aliens Collector magazine, right? That's a magazine because maybe once in a blue moon there's a 2-page story in it, but really it's all sorts of magazine type articles, words, maybe a photo here and then, but it's not comics inside it. It's a magazine. And similarly, you can have, and this was true for a lot of the sales magazines that came out for Marvel. So for instance, if they haven't happened yet, the Marvel previews that came out there, which really all they are is ads for upcoming Marvel titles. There are no stories to be had in the Marvel previews. Those are moving over to magazines because they aren't comics. They have comic people in them, but they don't tell stories. So those are moving over to there. But this is one of those things where, despite whatever guidelines we've got, there are always going to be judgment calls, and I'm not going to be surprised if a few things slide one way and then slide the other way until before they finally come to rest. I just don't want to keep moving them. So anyway, there's that. All right, let's see. Mike, okay. All right, so Mike says, I've got a question. When CB is open, I hit F12 for my collection stats. So he's talking about the part up here where you say File, Collection Stats, right up there. God. Man, that's going to be hard for me to break that habit of switching over to the wrong camera. Collection stats, okay. He is saying, I'm told I have 1640 comics in that particular database. Then parenthetically, it says I have 1,625 unique issues. Is it telling me that I have 15 duplicates? Yes, that's exactly what it's telling you. Let's look at this over here for a minute. So this is the Livestream Pete's database. It's a little bit like my real collection, but not exactly. So I have 58,357 comics, 54,057 unique issues, which means there's a bunch of them that I got more than one copy of, and so that's what that's all about. And occasionally you'll see some confusion on this when, for instance, if you do a find and say find me everything that Mike Wolfer ever did, and it'll say, okay, I found 12 things, but you're looking at it. And if you sum it up, or if you print it, it says, well, you had 15. Because they had 2 copies for some of those issues. When you say find, it's typically telling you how many lines it found, not how many total quantity it found. So that's something we're always trying to finesse in terms of the messaging, but that's it's always a challenge there. So be careful about what you're reading on that, and it should do it. All right, let's see. Doug says, comment on Grading Wizard. I got CGC 5.0. There's a couple of greater than 2-inch creases bends. When I put in the Grading Wizard, it comes back 2.0. Yeah. So the rules of the Grading Wizard, and let me see if I've got it over here. So the rules from the Grading Wizard taken direct. By the way, in case you don't know how to get to the Grading Wizard, if you come up under here and you look at your condition right there, right next to that is a question mark, and if you remember it, it's also F8. But what it will do is it will basically quiz you on, well, what's wrong with this thing, right? And so you look at the thing, and anything that's less than perfect to your eye, you remark on it, say things like, all right, well, we've got a little, we got some bends on it, right? So let's say they're not a big deal. I have a 1/4-inch bend, which it's not color breaking in the corner, all right? Well, my grade then immediately dropped down to very fine, 8.0. All right, but let's say I'd gone in there and let's do some heavier problems with the whole thing. So I'm gonna add some tape. Tape's a mother. The second I add any tape at all, this thing is VG. It's never gonna get better, if you put tape on it. I don't care if it's the cleanest, shiniest tape in the world. Grading guide says you've immediately dropped it to VG, even if you have the tiniest amount of tape. If you really went to town on the tape, you're at good or better. But you say, but wait, it's a beautiful book. We don't make the rules. We just go by them. Anyway, so and let's say I went there and I say bends. Well, okay, but the bends are very small, and the tears are moderate, and the surface wear is minimal, and the gloss is very high. You notice how the grade isn't moving at all because that tape is holding it down to its lowest grade. We only bother noting what's the thing that dumped it to that grade. Now let's say I remove the tape, right? So I'm going to go say, now I got rid of the tape. Now it says, all right, well, now you're in fine. Well, why am I in fine? I said I get minimal surface wear. That's not my problem. Tears. Okay, my staple tears, 1/4 inches or less. That's the thing that's dumping me down to fine. It doesn't care about the 1/4 inch non-breaking color bends. Those aren't your problem. If things are, by the way, equivalent grades, so when I get to small 1/2 inch ones, then you're there because of both the tears and the cover bands. Either one of them would have put you into the fine grade, but it's always the worst defect that you're noting. And there isn't really a sense in comic grading that if we have a ton of tiny little defects that suddenly you've fallen into a worse grade. The idea in comic grading is that if it's the kind of book that would have had 1/4 inch or less not color breaks and or a 1/2 inch or less color breaks and the whole thing, no one's really surprised when it's got a little bit of surface wear. No one's really surprised when it lost a little bit of cover gloss, etc. Those are all kind of just baked in. So there's no idea of like a bunch of little defects is enough to get you into the worst one. But that said, at least according to the Overstreet Grading Guide, let's go ahead and put these all back to their best conditions. The second I go down there and I say I've got a 2-inch or a 2-inch or less color breaking bend, I'm already down to VG 4.0. A couple greater than 2-inch creases and bends comes back 2.0. To go to 2.0, you'd need to have, quote, large creases or bends, possibly with color breaks. If your bends are 2 inches or less, then you should just be at VG 4.0. So double check that one. So I think you should be okay on that one. My guess is what happened here is the CGC graders, which CGC gets to roll their own rules a little bit. I mean, they're supposed to pay attention to the deals, but remember we did the CGC show where I actually showed them the Supergirl #1 with the rip down the back, and it was written as 9.8 or something on the cover, and I said, but it has a rip down the back, and their response to me is, consider yourself lucky. I mean, they were in no urge to give a refund on the grading, regrade it, and stick a 2.0 on it. I mean, that was not going to be something they did. So yeah, anyway. But the grades that are built into the Grading Wizard are straight out of the Overstreet Grading Guide. So when those change, we'll change. But until then, that's what we got. All right, so let's see here. Let's hit back to the chat. Okay, Agents DeCamp says, let's go back here. Is there a way to have thumbnails update themselves if a picture has changed? Sometimes it picks wrong, after being changed stuff to go and find the thumbnail and delete. Yeah, the trick is how you change it. So it's the difference between telling it you're giving it a new one and just letting it discover it for itself. So for instance, let's go ahead to the Marvel UK, what is this, the X-Men sticker album or something. All right, so here's number 3. I'm going to take number 3 out of the mix right now. Moving him out onto my desktop, which of course he moved himself onto a completely different screen. All right, but there's the folder, right? And now I'm going to go back here once I resize my windows. So I'm doing everything over here, as you guys probably know by now, on like a second or third monitor. So I do a little more dancing than I usually would. All right, so number 3 is no longer there. Now, if I took another picture and I stuck it in there, it's immediately going to find number 3, and then you'll get whatever thumbnail came with number 3. What you want to do, if you want to force it to update the thumbnail, is take some brand new picture, and I don't want to mess up the real thing, but let's say I had a brand new picture and I dragged it onto this one right here. All right, then what that's doing is when ComicBase is in charge, and boy, it would be helpful if I actually showed what I'm doing. All right, gosh, sorry guys, production difficulties. I'll get this straight. Brief backup. Okay. Whenever you go to a title in ComicBase, when you're just loading up a title, you see it does this little dance along the left-hand side where it says, what pictures have I got? Now, if it sees that you've got a picture and it knows it has a thumbnail, it's going to show whatever thumbnail it had last. Let's say it was a wrong picture. All right. It'll go ahead and clear down the thumbnail showing if you take the picture out of the folder. All right. So I went there, I right-clicked, said Show Picture File, and I took number 3 out of this folder. It clears out the picture, but if I just put number 3 back in the folder and let it go again, what it would do is it would say, oh, I've already got a pre-computed thumbnail for that guy, and it would just show you the old one. The way you do that, on the other hand, is if you take the picture, you drag it on top of the title. What that tells ComicBase is, hey man, he's replacing the picture. Now, the important thing here is you're doing the replacement during a time when ComicBase is watching. Because if you do it in the Finder or in Windows Explorer, we don't know that you were moving files around. There's no way we could know. But if you do all ComicBase is open and you just drag it on top, then what we know is we blow away all our old thumbnails and we replace it with a new thumbnail for the one you just gave us. So that's the best way to go if you're going to replace a picture, because then it automatically takes care of blowing away the old thumbnails for you. If for some reason you want to go ahead and blow away your thumbnails manually, the thumbnails are kept, so we have a bunch of different sizes that are kind of our standard sizes in ComicBase. This is the grid size over here, and you see what size that is right under here under grid cover icon size. So these are 48s over here. And there's also, under the album, there's an album cover icon size, which the default's 128. Well, if you go up under here, let's go over to File Tools, and go to Manage Pictures and Movies, which again, I'm just dragging things onto the right screen. You'll see over here that there's a location for the pictures and movies, which by default is going to be in your public, for all you guys, it's going to be in your public folder for shared pictures, movies, and so forth. Let me show you where that would be normally. On mine, all the ComicBase in the office share pictures over a Dropbox, just so when somebody gets a new picture, we all get the picture. So that's the way we collaborate, but it's probably not how you work. For all the rest of y'all, it's going to be kept in a place called, if we go to C, and we go to Documents, or C, Users, there we are, Users, there's a user called Public. And in that Public is Public Documents. And inside there's going to be the Human Computing folder, and that's where we're going to be dumping all our stuff. That's where the pictures go, that's where the movies and media go, logos, flags. There's even some animations in there. If for some reason you want to have a different animation for like when the screensaver starts up, go nuts. Knock yourself out. As long as it's called ComicBase Glow Animation.mp4, that's what it'll play. But anyway, all your thumbnails get stored in this thumbnail directory over here, which you'll see that we've got a bunch of them set up here. I've got, if I look at my 48s here, and I go to say Marvel UK, and I think this was X-Men Marvel UK, these got automatically built. So these are actually, if you hover over them, you'll see that they're exactly 48 pixels tall, and so, exactly 48 pixels wide by however high they need to be to fit the grid and so forth. And these get created automatically on the fly. Let's say I go and I blow these away right in there, all right? and I go away from this title and I come back, you'll notice it took just a second, but it just recreated all the thumbnails. You know, just for a split second, there was a little plus in here with a generic icon, and they got replaced by the real thumbnails. Now, if I go back and I look at that thumbnails directory, I just blew everything away, boom, I just got new thumbnails. So, should you ever have an urge to, you can go ahead and clear out your thumbnails with absolute impunity. Just go to your, go to wherever your pictures are stored, and that's under File, Manage Pictures and Movies, and whatever your location for pictures and movies is, by default, that's going to be C, Users, Public, Documents, Human Computing, and you can just blow away the thumbnails folder. Because as soon as you go to any other title in ComicBase, it'll just come right back, but it'll be filled only with the thumbnails that were generated right then for the pictures you've got. But yeah, feel that this is one of the few things I'll say. Yeah, go ahead. If should you ever feel a need, go ahead and blow thumbnails away. All it does is it briefly slows the program as it tries to figure out what all the pictures are. It's for like little titles like X-Men, Marvel, Deutschland. It's hard to even see the effect. If you went to something like Action Comics, on the other hand, you would notice it building thumbnails for a while because there's over 1,000 issues to do. But that's the main deal there. I hope that answered the question. All right, let's see how we're doing. Okay, quick report, sweet. Yeah, it's funny. That's a feature we added in a little after the ship of 2020. And we got a chance to kind of revisit how we did some of the old find reports and make it more flexible. And there's some neat little implications to that one. Feel free to play around with that one. Let's see. Okay. Lance says, would it be possible to add searchable cover artist info to Atomic Avenue, or is that limited to CB for a reason? More of an Atomic Avenue question. As I understand, the current thinking on Atomic Avenue is there was like a 2.0 of Atomic Avenue like 6-7 years ago. I mean, it was a long time ago where they made it so it was generally you could fire off this advanced search that was about as complicated as anything ComicBase could do at the time, which turned out was not great for e-commerce. I mean, it was really assuming you were going to take rifle shots at your target in terms of like, I want to get books that were written by Mark Waid that were published by DC, that after 1993, and yeah, I mean, it was assuming you really had a beat on your target, and that's not a great metaphor for e-commerce in general. So I think the current thinking is when they next go back and rev Atomic Avenue searching, I think it's going to be more like a series of free-form filters that you can throw out from the side. Like if you guys ever went to a site like Newegg or B&H Photo or something, depending on your context area, depending on what it is you're looking at, you'll get a different set of search filters you can kind of click on and off to narrow what you're looking at to get more relevant results. That said, it's a big topic, honestly, and I don't know that anything's going to be done with that immediately because I'm too busy making their lives miserable with these item descriptions and things like that. So we're kind of exhausting their bandwidth with other things that we want for ComicBase right now. So next time when they go and they call in favors from me to rev their system, then I've been given a heads up that they want to have another look at search. But yeah, right now that's not something not something that I think is on the immediate horizon. I think the thought on that is that they're not looking to add new generalized search fields to Atomic Avenue. They're looking to add more relevant search fields depending on what it is you're doing. But the whole idea of like a big advanced find like they've got right now, which also I believe only works for comic books, where you have like 28 search criteria you can pass in all at once. I think that's not going to be something that they keep doing. All right, so Bob said, how did I select all the Marvel UK titles? All right, I'm going to see if I can learn from from lessons here and see if Steve already answered this one. Oh, you're kidding me. Wow. This the one time I actually exerted a little bit of judgment and say, wait a minute, before I go and give the answer that's already been in the chat 2 seconds ago. All right, well, anyway, the way I got to find all the Marvel UK titles, let's go over to that screen. All right, hitting screen 4 for once. All right, the way I do it is I do Control F. That pulls up Find. Once I'm at Find, I go Find What? It's a title field. I go to Publisher. right? And then I just said is, and I chose a publisher, and so I said Marvel UK. I could say Dark Horse, for instance, to get all the Dark Horse titles, and yay, all 2,475 of them. All right, then once I found the ones I want, if I highlight down any set of them or hit Control A to select them all, then I can either print that list, just as a quick report, or I can use that as the basis for one of the more refined reports, like the collection reports and so forth, by right-clicking and say report selected titles as, and then choose one of the standard reports that makes any kind of sense for that. So for instance, I could get all my wanted lists, but only for the Dark Horse titles. I could do that using those steps. But that's a cool little feature. I'm glad we were able to slide that in. It's not, I mean, it makes perfect sense once you understand the flexibility of it, but I don't know if that you would get that just coming in cold. All right, so let's go here. Let's see here. Mad fold-ins are the worst. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. I think the wizard's great tool. Okay, a lot of discussion about the grading wizard. Man, you guys are just off on your own. You don't even need me here. Okay, when is Burning Man starting for beta testing? Honestly, it's going to happen when I get back from. It's going to happen when I get back from vacation. I was just hoping that Burning Man didn't burn the whole damn place down with this item description thing, because as soon as we got into it, it's like there were so many edge cases and so many implications up, down, and sideways. I cannot believe that we were able to throw take corrections in using either the new or the old versions of ComicBase into a database that was either the new or the old one, throw them out through the loop, get them processed onto Atomic Avenue, have their stuff updated, get them bundled up for either the new and the old stuff, sending out whatever messages to people, because different books had come into stock, and that whole convoluted loop of data. I cannot believe we got through that one and didn't blow the place up, because it changed so much stuff. But having gotten through that, at least, fingers crossed for now, I'm going to work on some things with less world-shaking implications for a couple days, go ride some roller coaster, and then we'll start the beta process properly when I get back. All right, let's see here. Can sets be created that span one or more titles? Yes, or they can. But another thing I want to see, what you do is you just add issues to set, and you can pile on as many things as you want. The quick way to do is just go from place to place, or you just do a search, like say, here's a list of 20 Mark Waid comics from whatever titles, highlight them, say add to set, or create set from those issues, and you can do that. I still, though, a feature I actually think is even more important than the searching on Atomic Avenue Rev on that one. I want to see some work with there's some more flexible ideas of how to sell rando elements. We talked about in some, or at least we hinted at broadly in some previous live streams. I want, the second we get some time to get further in the coordination between ComicBase and Atomic Avenue, I want to push that element, because I think it could be incredibly powerful, even way more than sets are now. All right, let's see here. CTR, yeah, okay. All right, let's see here. Digga. And Steve says, I didn't answer the Find Marvel UK because I thought you might give a more complete answer. Well, thanks, Steve. All right, and by the way, going back to, so of the questions I had, by the way, I think we probably got time for a couple more from y'all. If you want to ask them in the chat here, I will hit them as much as I can. Again, make sure you flag them with Comic-Based TV. But I did want to ask a couple of other things. Steve had asked previously, how do I export my whole inventory at once? And the answer was you can't. Now, the more complete answer is, well, why the hell not, Bickford? So what he's talking about is in Comic-Base Pro and Archive, you can go under Export, and you can say, all right, so here's comic books, and I can choose whatever fields I want to have in my export field, and I can quickly get a text file with just that stuff. And so it's like, well, what if I want to export my whole inventory? Like I want to dump all of my inventory, whether it's books or magazines or whatever else. Why can't I just do that in one big step? And the answer right now is because this is going to a text file. There's no defined format for what this is going to be, right? I don't know what fields you're going to choose. And some of these fields, like ISBN, exists for comic books. It doesn't exist for magazines. They have ISSNs. Books, on the other hand, have ASINs, the Amazon Stock Identification Numbers, and neither comics nor magazines have that one. Some of these things have things like there's a number of fields. They're specific to different things. There are no cover dates on books, for instance. So I don't know what fields you're going to choose, and there's certain fields you can choose that don't even exist. They have no analog in the other collectibles. So I can't have one big dump it out file format that I give to everyone that'll work for everything. What I can do, on the other hand, is if we know where we're aiming at, let's say we're going for Shopify or something like that, and I know they're expecting to see information on the following fields, then if those things exist between the different collectibles, or frankly, even if they don't, and I just can put spaces there, then I could write a Shopify file that goes across domains, but I can't give you a random text file. That is not something that I can finesse. Which then raises the question for me, because I'm asking, it's my show, I'll ask a question. One of the features we talked about doing for the next version of ComicBase is adding Shopify integration to ComicBase Archive Edition, and I will be following up with the folks who volunteered to be part of that process. Another one I'm wondering about, because it was just announced this week, is who is interested in the PayPal Zettel. That is, PayPal just announced their own point-of-sale service, which looks pretty damn competitive. I don't know what the integration points look like. I'm waiting to have a deeper dive with the folks over at PayPal about that from a development standpoint. But if that's something that we could support, is it something you guys are interested in using? So let us know where the priority should be on that one, because we would love to make it so that you can use ComicBase not only to drive sales on Atomic Avenue, but also to interface with your live customers in your stores as much as is possible. We have no intention of starting up our own storefront in-store software. That is beyond the scope of what we're going to be doing in ComicBase. And frankly, having looked at the marketplace involved and how just the different factors involved with how support intensive it is, how customized it is, and how little can be charged for it. I'm terrified of that as a marketing opportunity. We ran away from that one 30 years ago, and we have not looked back. That said, if you've already got a broader based solution like Zettel or Shopify or something like that we can export our data into and let you sync up on the other end once you sell something that deducts out of your ComicBase, to interface with that system, I don't mind that at all, as long as the load on us is not ridiculously involved. So that is something that we'd probably keep as a higher end feature for the archive folks. But that being said, that is where the head's at right now. So get in touch with us if there's a system that you're using that you are very interested in seeing supported, especially if it's broad based. We're all ears. So let us know. Okay, let's see here. One more check the chat here. Okay, Greg's reminding people about the message board again. Compton Man says, what about SQL script to export directly from the database? I can't give you direct file access from the database. I mean, as close as you get really is like the advanced finds, where you can fire off. Essentially, it comes down to SQL queries, but I can't give you like straight dump access into the database. I have some legal issues where I can't make certain information exportable because of licensing information that we've got, and honestly, it's probably not a great idea for us just to make the whole thing just straight dumpable. But that said, I'm interested in any legitimate things that don't break our license agreements and don't slit our own throats. I'm interested in supporting those. Let's see here. Greg says there's a request on the boards this week for a custom title field. Can I see this as being? I can see this as being as used. So I didn't actually catch that one. I'll admit with Mark gone, he's usually first line of defense on the board. So I don't. I've been busy enough trying to cover for all the massive work he does over there this week that I've not been able to browse that one as much as I wish. But if you're talking about the way that we have custom fields for, so we have custom fields for issues right over here, and there, in this case, we have a box number is how I define my custom field 1. Then we've got different text fields over there, and then we've got on the title level, we've got, if you go up under here and you go to the title itself, there are custom checkboxes that we have 3 of them defined, and I guess one of them I defined mine is just, I just called it text. And there's also tags you can apply. The reason we don't have a custom field is honestly because I haven't heard anyone make a really good case as to why we need one. Why what you'd want in a custom field couldn't be handled either with tags or with, the comments or, or something else. But if there is something like that, then yeah, no, that's something we could look into. I don't really have an objection. Adding any field is a certain amount of pain in my butt, but it's manageable. This way, it can't be as bad as adding item notes was. Yeah, no, it's if Compton Matt, if you wouldn't mind, if you could forward on that note just as a tickler to me, it's at pbickford at comicbase.com. That will make sure I don't get convention memory and want to remember to do that, but then the second I turn off the camera, I'll be like, oh, thank God, I have a beer, and I forget all about it. Just if it's not too much trouble, just send me a link to that one, and we'll have a quick look at that. Lance says, do floppy comics have ISBNs or something else? Yeah, they're supposed to have ISSNs, but a lot of times they get given ISBNs. On the foreign scene, they get given different things. And on the foreign scene, like even books, like hardcovers in Britain get given ISSNs. So it's International Standard Book Number, I think is what ISBN stands for, and then International Standard something else is what the SN stands for. It basically comes down to a periodical number, is what the other ones have. And it doesn't seem like it was highly adopted until somewhat recently. In other words, when I go back in time, I don't see a lot with these, but yeah, we've been doing it with comic books is we've been abusing ISBNs and ISSNs. We've been treating them as synonymous and flipping through both of them. But we do know that books aren't supposed to, magazines are supposed to have ISSNs and so forth. But that being said, whatever you put in those fields, we'll search it anyway. We automatically, whenever you search any of those fields, we automatically search the ISBN, the ISSN, the ASIN, UPC, and Alt UPC. They all get searched in one big search, because the idea is that if we found a match on any of that, then that's a miracle, and then we probably got your right book. All right, so let's see here. Shopify, PayPal. Okay, and let's see here. Streams that don't look right. Value over time graph. Yeah, Ed. All right, so Ed had a problem where he has the value over time graph, and it was he sent me pictures of it, and I absolutely believe it's happening on his machine, but the graph was pegging itself above his visible area. I looked back at the code, and I looked at how the form's set up, and damn, I can't reproduce what you got going on at all. It's a system-specific issue. I can say that with some confidence, but and I think the places I would look for that is anything you had to do that would involve they call it accessibility. Anything that's wants to relay out your screen for you for better reading, for larger viewing size, for whatever else. That's typically where those things go wrong, is because what they're doing is they're grabbing hold of the window itself, and then even though we said draw it at this size, they're saying no, I have a better idea. I'm going to draw it at this size or that size, and then things that that they didn't think to grab wind up flying off the side of the window because something got in the way between us and your display driver and took over and made things be not the size that we told it to be. Windows used to be really bad with this stuff back in the day. They used to, and there's still, I think, about 3 or 4 places to look for things that Windows has that take that stuff over. If you look at your font settings, if you go, a good place to start is if you hold down your Windows key and go U. That'll bring up display. Let me bring that up on the other screen here. So here is your display settings. Bring it up over here. So if you have make text bigger and you have it set to something not 100%, they might have played with that. If you have make everything bigger, that the make everything bigger is not a problem. Windows handles that part pretty elegantly these days. It used to be pre-Windows 10 that they used to do a lot of messing around with all these different things, and each of them have different magnification aspects, and they all, up until Windows very recently, they all really mishandle the problem, because what they really do is they grab a hold of the thing that the program put out, and then they alter it on the fly. I would say start by looking here, and then I've seen display drivers that also have magnification things that get in the way. If so, turn those off. But yeah, in a stock Windows configuration, that doesn't happen. My guess is you've got something like this going on your machine. Unfortunately, other than giving, kind of waving my hands a bit and making mealy-mouthed, sounds about this, there's a limit to how much I can troubleshoot on an individual level. I mean, it's the point where, like, at a certain point, this becomes a Best Buy issue. Because, I mean, look, we run a software company. We want it to run perfectly on everyone's machine, but we also aware, especially with Windows, that you can customize and tweak your machine in a trillion different ways, and there's a little bit of a balance between, like, yeah, we'd love to make it work no matter what you did, but there are things you can definitely do to your machine that make it so anything a software is doing will stop working, and that needs to be something you take the lead in resolving. We primarily got to start with, okay, if his stock version of Windows is going to work. Okay, if it does, that's a good starting point. All right, is it the 98% case where, of all the things that people tend to stick on their Windows, in all the things they tend to do with it, does it still work? If we get there, that's usually about as good as we can get, especially as a small company. When you get into the really strange stuff, yeah, it gets beyond what we can really help. But I would say start with those kind of accessibility things, because what's happening is we're saying draw this thing at a certain size, and it's going off your window, which means there's something in between it's called the application level where we are, and your display driver level where you actually, it turns it into bits on your screen, that your monitor actually, displays a certain RGB value at a certain coordinate. Somewhere in between that level, something is taking that over. And whatever that is, you got to turn that off, and then that should display properly for you. Okay, let's see here. Floppy's okay, got it. Okay, last thing I want to hit, because man, this flew. We got to do these more often. This was actually really useful, and honestly, they're way easier to prepare for than the big theme shows. The question is from Joe. I had a question about, he's looking at the notes on Avengers First Run, and he sees number 48, Peter Sanderson, LOC, and number 58 had the note, Don and Maggie Thompson, LOC. What the heck is an LOC? So let's go to the one in particular, and we'll talk about it, because I love this stuff. Okay, so here's Avengers 57, first appearance of the Vision, and it had Tony Isabella LOC, or number 56, Peter Sanderson LOC. LOC is letter of comment. Oh, and here we are for number 54, Don and Maggie Thompson LOC. So what that meant is, you guys remember back in the day, they used to have letters pages, face forward, fearless fan, and you could go in there and write a little paragraph long letter in purple crayon or whatever you used when you were a kid, to talk about how much you really loved the last issue, or whether you thought the last issue of Spider-Man was boring, and whatever the thing was, you had to make it short because they were going to print these things. You had about room for about, I don't know, 100 typed words, tops. If you were just brilliant, and then Stan Lee or whoever was editing that week would write you back, and if you ever got it published, I believe they even sent you that was actually one of the ways you would get your no prize, is you would get your letter published, but they give you basically as an envelope, but very highly sought after. Well, the cool thing is, a lot of people that we grew up and who became famous in the comic industry got their start as comic fans. And so Avengers number 54, 1968, Don and Maggie Thompson, a young couple at the time, no doubt, who later on, if they hadn't already, founded Comics Buyer's Guide, apparently wrote in a letter, talking about, whatever they had done in Avengers 53, probably. Tony Isabella, who later on became a major writer in his own right, as well as a long time columnist for Comics Buyer's Guide, his a letter published in '57. You'll find letters of comment from things like Frank Miller, way before he became famous and so forth. Writing into Spider-Man and such. It was really cool. And then Peter Sanderson. Peter Sanderson does what I do. He was Marvel's historian. He was for many years. He was the guy responsible for figuring out where the first appearance of this guy, that guy, and the other guy was. And back when Marvel used to care about their continuity, he would really care when this is the time when Peter Parker got his new costume. And so if you're ever showing a story that is set before or after that one big battle with Doc Ock, where he ripped his costume and had to do something else, or he got the new improved web shooters, he would be the guy who would he was almost like the script editor. He'd be the guy who kept the other writers on track and say, no, you set that story back before he got the new and improved web shooters, so you can't draw the costume that way. And so he would actually keep things straight. And then later on, Peter Sanderson, of course, wrote just jillions of Marvel history books, as well as serving as the editor on the Marvel A to Z's and so forth, just giving all the histories of all the stuff. But back when he was just a fanboy, apparently, was it Avengers number 56? He wrote in just to take issue with something someone had done, and that's probably the first time any of the guys at Marvel had ever heard of him. So anyway, that's what letters of comment are. People think they're cool, so that's why we note them. And so that's that one. All right, I think that's all we had time for right now. But yes, it's LOC, loving our comics. Right on. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go get myself a beer, and and we're not here next week, so wish me luck. And Mark, of course, you'll be in safe hands with the rest of the gang while I'm gone, because everything will probably run far more smoothly because you won't have me messing with the system on the back end. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you're enjoying summer, because man, I don't know about you guys, but summer is going fast. I understand that next week is meant to be Comic-Con away from home. I hope it's the last time ever that we do one of those, because next Comic-Con I want to go to, I want to see everyone. So anyway, guys, have fun, and we'll see you on the next time. Bye-bye.